and have this dialogue with us. My name is Wairimu Mwangi. I am currently a visiting assistant professor at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, which is located in Daytona Beach, Florida. In terms of my background, I do have an undergraduate degree in aerospace engineering, a master's in data science with a concentration in cybersecurity. And I guess in terms of explaining where my interest in aviation came from is when I did my flight. So I have a private pilot's license, and that's what ignited my interest in just a little bit more than just flight. So understanding, you know, what does this bolt do, and how do we get this thing from the ground to the, you know, up into the sky, whatever it is. And I think what I'd say is over my period or time of going through my education and having some, you know, work experience as well, I noticed that there was a bit of a gap in that there's all this data that was being collected and not much of it was being used in terms of building efficient solutions. And so that's when I did my master's in data science and cybersecurity, because obviously safety on that end. And yeah, that is who I am. And so I think from this point, what I'll do is, I don't know, Nelly, do you want to go ahead and have Alvin introduce himself, or should I just go straight ahead?
I think
I don't know, I lost you there.
yeah, that's right. I'm connected on multiple devices now, so it's tricky. So
Okay.
I think you can go ahead, and then Alvin can introduce himself later.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'll just go ahead and share my screen real quick. And I don't know, do you see this? I'm hoping you can see my screen.
Yes, looks good from my end.
Okay, perfect. So just to get us started on today's conversation, I'll be touching mainly on what are those skills, both technical and non-technical skills, that are essential to building Africa's talent, not necessarily, you know, not just specific to space alone, but in terms of the sector as a whole. So before we get started, my first question is, you know, what is or what makes up the space industry? So it's important for us to understand that space is basically an ecosystem of multiple aerospace factors and technologies. So just stripping it down to the bare minimum, aerospace can be, or rather is broken down into two factors. So we've got aeronautics and astronautics. Aeronautics is basically the sector that deals with operations within the Earth's atmosphere. So anything that you think that flies within the Earth's atmosphere, when it comes to either planes, drones, UAS systems, all of that good stuff that is within the Earth's atmosphere. And then astronautics is operations outside of the Earth's atmosphere. So now your rockets, your satellites, everything that, you know, we basically send out of Earth that now revolves around us in space. And so the reason I start off by posing this question is because I think sometimes there's a misconception that these two things are mutually exclusive, but that's not the case. That's because they both operate as an ecosystem. So whatever we are doing within the Earth's atmosphere still contributes to what is happening outside of the Earth's atmosphere. And at the same time, space is not just about, you know, rocket ships and astronauts and probably satellites. There's a lot more to it. And so it's important that we understand how these factions basically play together. And that's why I start off with just giving a bit of a background here. Give me 1 second. Do you still see my screen, or did that?
It went off.
Oh, give me 1 second. Okay.
Yeah, it's back now.
Okay, there we go. Apologies. All right, so let's talk about what technical skills are essential to this industry. One thing that we have to look into is STEM, a good, strong STEM foundation, and mainly focusing on the math and physics aspects of STEM. I think as recently as last month, key players such as Elon Musk and the NVIDIA CEO as well were just talking about how, in order for us to succeed in some of this technical industries, that math and physics are going to be the key players in this. And so it's important that we start investing in young children and even in ourselves, those of us who are early career or even professionals in this industry or anything that is technical based. Then programming. This includes coding, so the development of algorithms and models in various language programs. So it could be Python, Java, C++, any of these and more as well that basically allow us to now start creating the software that is needed to operate some of these systems. So whether it is for your hardware or software systems, at least having an understanding in how the algorithms are developed is important. And then obviously testing and debugging. To code, you need to have the ability to test and debug as well. And so building those skills are essential so that you're able to take what is just, either an idea or a thought in these programs and basically develop them into elements or entities that can be used in the industry. And then system integration. One thing that allows system integration is the programming element of it, where now you take that software and connect it to hardware systems. So being able to understand how those two things, your hardware and software, correlate to each other is important. And then data analysis. These are just some key skills that I've noted within the industry, mainly because in order for us to make informed decisions as well as be innovative, we need to take the information or the data that we collect, clean it and transform it into useful information so that we are making data-driven decisions based on the innovative or creative products that we come up with for this industry. So regardless of whether it's, again, the astronautics or aeronautics factor, at least then we have a way to make sure that we are taking what we are creating and using it to our benefit through the data. Now, in terms of non-technical skills, we've got non-technical and technical skills. So I've divided this into two things, where what we have is what we call soft skills and your transferable and professional skills. One thing to note is that hard skills open the door and get you into the room, while your soft skills keep you in the room. And so for the transferable and professional skills, we have what we call project management. This is now where you're basically taking the element of running a program. So how does it start from beginning to end? What does it take in order for you to complete that project and make sure that you are doing it well? Then marketing and business development. For us to be able to make sure that we are key players in this global industry, we need to make sure that we're able to market the elements or the products that we come up with our competitors. Because at this point, we cannot just look at ourselves being the only ones in this industry, obviously. We have to start looking at, the Western world and some of the things that they're doing and how we can compete and market what is coming out of Africa. Then policy and regulatory compliance. This is also important because we're still young as a continent when it comes to this industry, and we're still growing and learning how to improve some of these things. But in order to make sure that we are on the same page and not having different regulatory aspects, we need to find a way to collaborate and also extend those skills among ourselves. Now, in terms of the soft skills, communication is key always. Without communication, then that causes breakdown in whatever it is that we are trying to create or grow in this industry. Then teamwork. You can't or we can't do this alone. So that means multiple entities, countries, factions, whatever it is, working with each other and finding a way to do it collaboratively. Then networking. For those of us who are young professionals or currently in school, this is a big or great way to get yourselves out there. So whether it's through different, let's say, conferences that you might attending, one that, Nelly, you just mentioned at the beginning of the session. And actually, just to point out that Nelly and I met, at a conference, and this led to having this dialogue. Networking is important among, those of us who are interested in the industry. Then leadership. Of course, having good leadership and ensuring that the leaders who are pioneering this industry for us are also cohesive with those of us who are working in the industry. And then adaptability and creativity. a lot changes very quickly and fast as well in this industry. So we need to be able to adapt and be creative in working with the changes that come along the way. So making sure that even though, because I mean, failure at this point is inevitable. I keep telling my students at the point is that, when you think about a company like SpaceX or any NASA, whatever it is, it takes them so many failures before they can actually get a rocket or spaceship from the ground up into space effectively. And so we have to make sure that we adapt accordingly and make changes along the way without and also doing it ethically as well. So yeah, that is in terms of your non-technical skills and inclusive of your soft skills as well. Now, key challenges and gaps that we might be facing within this industry. We have training, quality, and regulation. So what do I mean by this? One thing that we'll notice is that among the different African countries, you'll find that perhaps we have multiple approved training organizations, or what are called ATOs. And at times the resources that perhaps either one training organization or school in this case might have is not enough. So if you have perhaps, let's say, a GIS training institution or unmanned aircraft systems institution, so either they have one or two drones or perhaps maybe one aircraft that is being used to train students, that's not feasible. So should we now start considering a way to consolidate some of these resources so that now we can create much more accessibility to those people, students who are interested in having careers in this field. Then institutional partnerships and collaboration. Africa is big, we've got many countries, and so the possibility of having 50 plus agencies poses the risk of potentially now having too many cooks who spoil the broth per se. And so we need to start thinking about how we can make this local partnerships and regional collaboration that ensures that we are not losing the plot in terms of where we want to go within the industry and even the impact that we're looking to make. Then funding and accessibility. Aviation as a whole tends to be one of those industries that is high cost driven, and there is a high cost barrier both for students and anybody who has a product in this field. So is there a way that we can find, bursaries or scholarships that support talent, and at the same time looking at government and industry co-funding possibilities that basically support the growth of the industry without creating that barrier that stops talent from being able to grow the industry in Africa? Then there's also the element of brain drain crisis. And what do I mean by this? The loss of talent, whether it's students or professionals. And when we look at the student aspect, now you find, looking at me and even somebody like Nelly, who's I think in the UK currently, where either our higher ed programs are not offering what it is we might be looking for. So you find that now talent either now goes abroad or out of Africa. And unfortunately, it's not necessarily coming back to feed into the pipeline within the industry. Or if not, we can also consider those of you who might be trained locally or who are working locally being poached by other elements or entities. I'm looking at like the Middle East. So they also tend to get a lot of African talent, and that's not just within, the space sector alone. If you look at medicine as well, other industries are also facing this. And so we need to find a way to either build systems that support the opportunities that Africans are looking for, or now find a way to make sure that we can either advance or improve the current systems that are there. Then continental industry coordination. So I think I mentioned this is just where we're talking about having, the potential of over 50 national agencies that could lead to fragmented policies and regulations. So space in itself, or aviation in itself, is a very niche sector. And at the same time, it's also fragile in terms of safety elements. So having too many agencies could lead to policies or even practices that might not be necessarily supportive to the growth of the industry. So just a quick call to action. What is it that we can do now to either grow or solve some of the problems that we have? First thing that I would say is early learning and training. So integrating aviation or space curiosity in schools and universities. So early learning, so you're talking about your kindergarteners all the way to high school, and then after that, going to university. One thing that I learned or discovered is Senegal is doing something interesting, what they're calling the space bus. And what they're doing, this is an initiative where they're taking this bus and traveling around the country, just basically teaching young kids, whether it's in kindergarten, high school, and telling them or teaching them more about space. So this is one way that we can do it. If at all we cannot integrate this learning system within the curriculums in the different schools or educational systems in the continent. So this is just one way to think out of the box or out of the curriculum. Then civic education, why is this important? Now, when you start seeing governments, because obviously, if we're talking about the space sector, this would include some sort of government collaboration with players in this industry in Africa. So it's important to raise civic awareness in terms of what space is and how it is beneficial to the communities that are now seeing governments starting to spend money in this industry. So educating them and letting them know why, because if you think of it, I mean, we still have to deal with certain problems within our communities. There's still people who don't have food, don't have water. So if they see us spending, a huge amount of money in this industry and don't understand why, we have to first start that element of educating them, because we can tell them, okay, now we can use satellite systems that help us with agricultural production. So yeah, civic education is another good thing to do. Expanding skill development. So what do I mean by expanding skill development? So aviation, again, or rather space, is not just based on having your astronauts and rocket ships that go in outside the Earth's atmosphere. We need to look at it holistically. And what do I mean by that? There's the element of meteorology that comes into play. You have unmanned aircraft systems, you have those who are doing GIS, you've got operations, you've got maintenance. So we need to start thinking about all the moving parts that make it possible to grow this industry and also support talent and skill development in these different factions within the industry. Then pushing for harmonized collaboration. So local and regional partnerships are important, and the way we can now start pushing for this harmonization is through looking at policies that we can create that support the entire continent, working collaboratively on projects, looking into funding that support different elements. I mean, if you look at it, geographical positions and what Africa as a whole can present in making sure that we are harmonized in the products that we are creating, as well as the talent that we are feeding into this industry. Then building visibility. What do I mean by this? Instead of being gatekeepers as our own individual countries, or if you're working on a project on your own, obviously you still maintain the element of having the key production of your products, but then you can go ahead and publish projects that could now sustain other thoughts or pipelines that promote, conferences or committees that build visibility within the continent. Then mentorship programs. What do I mean by this? This can look like internships or professional clubs, conferences, competitions, anything that is basically allowing us to now start using the talent that is coming through either right out of school or through young professionals, or even those who are already experts in this field who can now mentor the younger generation. So I think in terms of just, wrapping it up, what I would say here is that my closing remarks would be is that Africa doesn't lack talent, and the issue that we have is a lack of coordination, investment, and sustainable frameworks. So the future of our space sector lies in basically uniting aviation and space training as a whole. So building strong partnerships, addressing things like funding barriers, and then finding a way to retain our talent and not having it being drained out, taken out of the continent. So that is my part. I think you're muted, Nelly. We don't hear you.
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you very much. I was saying we should give a round of applause to Wairimu for the excellent presentation and just sharing your thoughts on the topic. Thank you so much. That was very extensive, very broad. And it was very nice to see you chipping in your own experience as someone who works in aviation and have the skills of an aviator and just showing that bridge between space and aviation. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. And some of the points you had mentioned, like policy regulation or training local talents. Some people on the call are actively doing that. I see a team on the call from the African Space Leadership Institute doing the ASA competitions, and Dr. Ifrik is on the call as well doing the work with NanoSAR. Hopefully we get to hear from them. So it's really great to hear you point out some of those points. And I'll just call on Alvin. Alvin, if you're ready for your presentation now and to share your thoughts on the topic as well. Thank you. I think you should be able to share your screen if you want to try.
I can try. Do you hear me well?
Yes, from my end. All good.
Okay, that's fine. So I'll try to share my screen and yeah.
Great, looks good.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay. Are my slides moving? Okay. Perfect. Okay, then that's good. Thank you so much, Nelly, for this invitation. And I do hope everyone can hear me. Good evening to whoever is on this call, or good morning to where you are at this time. So I was invited to share on how we can develop Africa's space talents, leveraging on networks and opportunities. So we had to introduce ourselves. So I'll just give a brief introduction of myself. So this is me for those that can't see. I come from Uganda, a country in East Africa, called the Pearl of Africa. Yes, so I have a bachelor's in telecommunications engineering from Makerere. I have also worked as an RF and network optimization engineer. I have had a privilege to pursue a few research projects with the government. I am also a proud educator, and for this specific talk, I teach satellite communications. Also like to work with junior researchers, and I think we championed the Space Apps Challenge in, I think, 2022, was part of the team. Did my master's in space studies from ISU in France, have ground stations experience and systems engineering, have worked at the Paris Observatory. I am a member of IAF, which stands for International Astronautical Federation, that promotes space for all, and this is on the African subcommittee. I currently do work with a US-based startup called Satellite, and here I do both entrepreneurship and engineering, and also proud member of a Ugandan space startup called Nelly-helen Space, and a South African skilling program called Moonshot Africa that was started to train young girls in high school in South Africa. So this is who I am. This is how I came into the space industry, and I will share with you some of the things I've learned or the things I believe we can use to grow the space talent. So I would like to start this conversation with a simple structure of the space segment. So here we do have the space segment, and That is everything in space. And so we have the satellites. This could be small or big. And we also have the International Space Station that we have all heard of, that is soon going out of existence, and more will be coming. And then on the ground, we do have the space launchers from SpaceX and everyone else. We do have the antennas, the command centers. And so whoever is in the space field is not necessarily in space. Most of us are on the ground. Okay, and so as the previous speaker has shared, space is not only on engineering. Our host today is a space lawyer. And so even though we are engineers, but there is more to space. So I thought I could share that. So we do have engineering, of course, we do have space law, we do have astronomy. I know people have heard about this, where we study stars and everything. We do have space science, and here we do have astrobiology, astrophysics, saying the cosmos and the Big Bang Theory. We also have human performance in space, and this is for the astronauts that go to space and to see, okay, so as they go for their 6 months mission, how do they change, right? How does their musculoskeletal system change? How does their nervous system change? And there's a lot of research being done in that. We also have space entrepreneurship. There's a lot of space startups now because the private sector has grown. And then everyone, of course, in Africa loves the space applications. And this is where we have Earth observation, satellite navigation, and satellite communications that the famous Starlink falls in. So this is just an overview of the space industry for you to know that whoever is on this call can be able to plug into the space industry somewhere. Okay, so I will go to see, so they said, what is Africa's talent gap? I believe that we have 5 things that we are lacking in the talent. And the first one is specialized education. As the previous speaker said, that we have brain drain, and Nelly is currently not in Africa. And the previous speaker is currently not in Africa. Unfortunately, right now, I'm also not in Africa. And so you see that because there is no specialized education in Africa, everyone is running away or moving out, to get that. So that's a gap that we do have. Then we don't have hands-on skills and experience, as Nelly has shared. I mean, as the previous speaker, the programming and all these things. So Africans are very good at theoretical, right? Give them a course and they'll score for you A's. And you give them a project, it is an interesting thing, right? Because they don't know how to touch these things. But now when you go to our brothers in India, oh my God, they will do very, very amazing things. So we do lack hands-on skills and thus experience. Then space is a very complicated field. Let us admit it's very complicated. And I have shared all those sectors, but we still don't know. There is so much that we don't know. And that even the people that are in the space industry think they would know, but there's so much that we don't know. And this is a huge gap. Then also, space is expensive. Very, very expensive. So we might come here and say, of course, the African governments are not doing this, but the fact is that it's expensive. And even for you to even travel and go to these courses, you need to sell a whole plot of land, sell all your cows, all your pigs, go to the prayer mountain so that you can actually go and receive simple skills and education. Then, of course, we do not have a good chain between academia and the industry. People teach and they teach, then the industry is alone. And yet, it should be a conveyor belt, right? So I am a teacher, of course. So when we train engineers to go out in the field. But now you find that we train people who have the theory. When they go in the industry, nothing. So those are the gaps that we do have. Now, we also have untapped, unexplored areas. Everyone is speaking about engineering. If you see space, oh, I want to be a space, what, I'm an engineer. But there's other areas that we can tap as Africans. You don't need to be an engineer. You don't need to have the A's in physics and chemistry and math. So we have space law and policy. So whoever is listening and you're a lawyer, that's a thing for you. Satellite navigation. I assume everyone here uses GPS to move, to see people and things like that. And this sector is really, really unexplored for us. Human performance in space. Yes, so this research is majorly done by people in the US. And if you go to Google Scholar and look for a paper that has been written by an African on human performance, I pray for you to find one. There is no research being done in this. Space science, everyone is thinking about the moon. We have planets, and it stops there. No one is doing research in astrobiology, astrophysics. So you have to say, okay, as we want to conquer the planets, there's no African. And so we managed to take, I think, a goosey seeds to space, right? So that research can still be done in Africa. Space entrepreneurship, we don't have companies in space, everyone is the government. Yet, there's so many people that have a lot of money, and they can really invest in this. Data analysis, we are all relying on Sentinel. This is an unexplored area. Another one, I feel people don't usually invest in science communication. We all don't have to be the big brains of the class. Maybe you have a gift at speaking or publishing reports, social media. You could start as this. I watched a TikToker from Spain, and she has built her career by just doing TikTok videos on space. And so you could do this LinkedIn. You could, today I met a man whose career is just publishing reports, right? And so this is an untapped area. So you don't need to be very expertise. Okay, so Nelly said, what do I think the African governments need to do? And so I think that before we even say we need funding, we need to increase space awareness. Does your grandmother or grandfather know about space? Or do they think it's for the weird people or things like that, right? We have seen that there's a lot of application that we have. So I think we need to, first of all, increase space awareness. How we do if we would like to pass something in the country that's on the government. We also need to support these academic institutions. Before we say, that we are taking people abroad, we have institutions here that the government can support. We can also establish new training institutions. And then also, we have talked about the policies, but the policies don't only need to be working for the government. They also need to work for the private sector so that I can start a new company tomorrow without any problem, right? There are young people that are very, they're ambitious and they have dreams, but maybe the policy is prohibiting them. Of course, we need more investment, and the government, is saying, how does this help us move forward? They do not really believe in this. And so then, of course, we need to empower the private sector. So the government needs to make it easier for the private sector. This could be from the local private sector or from investors coming into Africa. We need as many partnerships as we can. For now, we can't do it alone. We just need to know, as we all know, we are a young continent in this industry, so we can't do this without it. And also, of course, benchmarking. The government has to support people to travel, and see all these things. Today I was in the World Space Business Week, and there's a thing I usually do called black hunting. And so in this place, you will find a lot of white men. No offense to people who are like that on this call. But then you find few Africans, right? And in a space of like 400 white people, you find like 6 Africans. So some lady came and talked to me and said, hi. I was like, finally, I meet someone that looks like me, right? And so we need to send people to come and learn and see, because these people have already developed and we are developing countries. So if we don't support people to go and learn these things, there is nothing that we can have. In the industry, of course, I'll say that there is a lot of innovation that can go on. Still, like I said, the industry and academia need to partner together. And then local capacity building. I have a Nigerian professor that said, even if you build the best technology, if the local person doesn't know how to use it, that is all for nothing. So you need to train the farmer, you people that are passionate about Earth observation. If the farmer doesn't know how to interpret the satellite image, it's a lie. So we need to build capacity locally. And of course, the industry can provide employment opportunities so that people like Nelly and Wairimu can be employed back home in Africa. And of course, the industry can also form expert networks so that people that are in the industry can, be able to talk to each other. Space is a very small niche, and the more networks we have, the more you can be able to connect and learn from each other. Of course, we need to standardize policies so that whoever is joining in finds a path that is smooth for them and not having any problems, because space is already hard. So if space is complex and hard, then we need to make sure that policies are moving, but also that we have standards as Africa. We usually want to do things quarter, but we need standards. And of course, the industry can provide platforms. This is through conferences, and even through this is a platform where people can come and learn and, hear and think about things, because change starts from you thinking about something, right? You think about it and you go and say, okay, I had this from somewhere. I had this from the professor. I had this from this. So I think those can be there. Then academia's role. Of course, before we say that we need to increase education, we need teachers to teach the students. So we need to skill educators, right? My speaker here is a professor. We need to skill more African educators. There's no one who will train these Africans if we don't have local educators. We can't hire or we can't afford the American professor. So we need to skill these educators. We, of course, need as many international partnerships for now, and so to collaborate with this, with ESA, with NASA, with what. We need to expand training. We have so many space sectors, but it hurts me to see that we are all pushing engineering, maybe a little of law, and that's just it, right? That's just it. We need to expand training and train every space sector, because as I said, not everyone is talented in engineering, right? People have different talents. And then, of course, as the previous speaker said, we need to start this early on, not at university or at masters. As you grow, your cognitive ability, also starts to become ish. And so you need to start this now, because now the kids, they know. The thing that the developed countries, quote unquote, beat us is that by the time my child is in middle school, they have heard about, a satellite, right? But I first discovered a satellite in university, you can imagine, right? Because who knows that in Africa, right? So we need to start this now. Of course, we need more research. Research is cheap, you don't need funding to go and get Google Scholar and start doing research. We need to do more research. As I said, diversify and tap on every industry. And of course, we should make this as affordable as we can to see that we can bring in more people. Okay, A small break. Space is actually fun. It's not as complicated as we are saying here. You know, people will say space science, astronautics, what. No. And so I hope everyone has watched either of these movies. We do have Interstellar, we have The Astronaut Farmer, Hidden Figures, which is very passionate for the young women. And then also we do have Contact. So if you haven't watched these, please go and do that. Space is actually fun, and you will learn so much from these movies. Don't be so packed into the book, right? Okay. What opportunities do we have? I think as a continent that this is still virgin, and so that makes it a big opportunity for whoever is has the plan to invest in it or to join it, to thrive in it. Space is a global industry that you know, there is space you can literally work anywhere. Space has very many applications, as I've said, and there are scholarships for you. There's a lot of networks, and there are a lot of international conferences. If you check LinkedIn, you'll find so many Africans that are saying, oh, we thank God I traveled for this, I traveled for this, I traveled for this. So there's so many opportunities that we can leverage. So please don't be left behind. Okay, of course, we did speak about the space societies, and there is the famous SGSC. Even for your country, go and check Google and see what does your country have. If you're in Kenya, if you're in Nigeria, if you're in Togo, is there a space network? And then there's specialization. If you are a lawyer, there is a space law network. If you are a scientist, if you're an engineer, then of course there's a continental network, right? There are societies that collect Africans together. And of course, academia. If you've been in an institution, I am an alumni of ISU, which is the International Space University. So if I move around and say I'm in ISU, I have a network, right? And so there's all these networks that you can join to be able to learn. So as I land the plane, I just want to say there is a big, enormous future in the African space industry. We opened up the African Space Emergency this year, and this is in Cairo, and they're currently moving from Addis Ababa to Cairo. And so this means that we shall have more and more innovation. We are, so many countries are now starting up space agencies. We are praying for Uganda. And then there is more skilled force needed, of course, because the sector is growing. So because definitely there are more people that we need. The space economy for Africa is estimated to be at 23 billion by the end of next year, compared to the global that is 750. So this means that there's potential, really. And then, of course, there is more external funding. There's so many investors that have the money and they're coming to Africa. You just need to convince them that your idea is the best and they can fund you. And of course, we are transitioning to be self-reliant, that we can build our own satellites. Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt are doing this. And of course, we are moving towards a more space-informed continent. Okay, so today I was seated with Africans, and we had a conversation about the Zambian sausage. So I thought I could ask you as an African here, have you heard about these foods? Have you even had them? If you haven't, please put them down. When you travel to those countries, please look for them. So there's the Zambian sausage. I was talking to someone and said that is the best sausage he has had in the whole world. And then there's the Ugandan luombo, there's the Kenyan Rolex, there's the Nigerian jollof rice. Oh my God. Then there's the Moroccan pastilla and the Togolese fufu, right? So if you haven't had these African foods, if you get a chance, please come and do it. Let's harness our culture. Okay, as I conclude, I have a simple thing here to show you. If you're in the space industry, if you want to join the space industry, I believe that it's a simple matrix. it starts with a passion, right? You have a passion, you have a dream, and then don't stop on the dream, right? Get knowledge, right? Get knowledge. Continuously get knowledge. When you get knowledge, practice, okay? Find a place that you can do. Even if you don't have a job, research is free, people. Research is completely free. You don't even have to pay anyone. You just need to convince someone to just listen to you. Practice and work, and then join networks. It's a very small niche. You can actually talk to people who are ready to support you. Whoever you've seen here, look for us on LinkedIn. We are very willing to talk to you and to do that. Afterwards, train someone else, just as you've been trained. Train another person, right? Have an opportunity. Don't be so expensive when a young person says, can I have some of your time? And you're like, my schedule is so busy. No, right? We all need to support each other. So train someone else, right? Train someone else. As you train, you will realize, do I actually know these things, or I am a scam myself, right? So, and this continues going. When you keep on training, you grow more passion, you get more knowledge, and then you continue working and you build the network. Okay, that's all I had to share today, and off to you, Nelly. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Alvin. That was really an interesting conversation. And yes, he said a lot of funny things that, kept us laughing. Thank you for making it so lively and interesting, and building on some of the things that Wairimu had said in her earlier conversation as well. So everybody, I'm so happy we started the conversation on time, and we still have a whooping 20 minutes or so for a discussion session, and I would really like everybody to be involved. If there's any part of the conversation you feel we haven't touched, if you have a question or even a contribution or a clarification, please feel free to raise your hands, or feel free to use the chat box to send a message so that we can engage in this dialogue. It's a short time, but I really love this webinar series because it opens my mind to see what every other person is thinking about a topic, and that's very helpful. Okay, we have Dr. Freaky's hands up. Any other hands? I'll be keeping a mental list of everybody that has raised their hands or put in the chat box. So Dr. Freaky, I'll just come back to you fast right after I ask one or two questions. So I've noted down. Any other person, please just keep your hands, keep them up. Thank you. So just a very quick one, and I'll start with Wairimu. I have a question here where I wanted to ask you. You talked about skills and the fact that people don't have hands-on skills, and I think that's very important topic to bring, because depending on the aspect of space, I think sorry, I'm trying to recall how to pronounce Alvin. I was going to say something else. Alvin had described the different segments of the industry, and I believe that in Africa we have different growth rates for each of the segments. Like GIS and air observation, for example, there's a lot. I believe that there's a lot of talent there, as per when you compare this with maybe human performance in space, or if you compare space applications with human space flight, you will see that it won't match up in terms of the skills and talents we have. But let's focus on what we have. So in terms of people that have maybe skills or degrees in maybe GIS or any of this, maybe space policy and law, for example, they have degrees or talents there, but there's no opportunity to apply them locally where they are. How do you think is one of the best way to bring themselves out of this kind of like very limiting situation? Sorry, Wairimu, it's a long question, but I hope you understand.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So what I will say, I mean, yeah, that is a good question that you're asking. And what I'll say is that this is not just a challenge in Africa alone, just from where I'm at as well in the US, I see that being a challenge for many students, but let me focus this to African students or those of us who are on the continent currently. My advice would be threefold. And what do I mean by this? So if you can't find the opportunities, create them. So don't wait for a paid internship or lab position. Many space-related problems can be tackled with, free open source tools. So for example, GIS and Earth observation, students can use something, I think, like the Sentinel Hub, ESA's, or the European Space Agency's EO browser, Google Earth Engine. You can use all these open resources to analyze open satellite data, tracking deforestation, mapping urban growth, monitoring floods, improving agriculture, so many things. Those who are drone enthusiasts can build or operate low-cost UAVs to capture imagery for agriculture or surveying projects. You said there's those who are in policy. Start looking at some of the policies that need to be created. The UNUSA, or United Nations Office of Outer Space Agency, I mean, they're looking for people who can contribute to this, because when we look at this on a broader scale, space, who does space belong to, right? And so as we start launching things, you know, and using it, and also having all this traffic that will be coming out and going out to outer space, how can we contribute to that? So you, who's, I think you're doing your PhD in space policy, right? If I'm not wrong.
More on the politics side.
Well, on the politics side,
Mine's space politics, yeah.
Yeah, you can contribute or find ways that you can create opportunities and give back. So connecting with others, one way of doing that, so it's threefold. So creating the opportunities, connecting with others, and then showcasing your work. So don't just keep your skills in your laptop. Find a way. I mean, open a LinkedIn account. They have a free version. Document what you're doing. You can either post your projects. You can use elements like GitHub, or even write a blog if So, you know, employers, researchers, and collaborators often tend to discover talent through some of these portfolios. So that would be one way. I mean, like I said, that threefold.
Yeah, that's very extensive.
Yeah, so if opportunities feel scarce, be proactive by building them and making them visible. So that's how you stand out in a competitive industry and show that you're not just trained, but you're also capable.
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting. Thanks so much. And I don't know if there are other hands up. So this is discussion session. Please feel free to send your question or clarification to the chat, and feel free to let us know if you want to contribute to the discussion. So quickly, I'm just going to go back to Alvin, because I think brain drain was first mentioned by Wairimu. But I think when it comes to space, I don't know if we can actually make the argument of brain drain. Of course, for medicine and other sectors, we can say that's like a big issue. But considering that some parts of our ecosystem, some parts of the industry in Africa is not very fully developed, it's hard to say we are facing like a real threat to brain drain, apart from the fact that all three of us are not on the continent at the moment, like you mentioned. But yes, I just want to say something that I was having a conversation with one of the AU experts on space, and the thing is, migration is a part of human nature. You can't, force people from maybe moving out. People migrate for different reasons, but there must be some way that we need to work for diaspora to contribute back to capacity building on the continent. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts, Alvin, on how diaspora can contribute. What sort of projects can we focus on the continent to ensure that people wherever they are can contribute to the sector in the continent?
I think for whoever is African, whoever is a lover of the continent, definitely has a chance to contribute, right? So we said that the first thing is you can mentor someone, right? When someone sends you a LinkedIn request, please respond to it, right? And have a conversation with them, tell them the truth, right? And encourage them. We have talked about so many space societies that you can join, and they need volunteers, right? To maybe to talk about your experience, to share your story, right? Because through your story, you're inspiring someone, you are encouraging someone, they are saying that this is possible, right? And so that is very, very possible. If you do have some funds to spare, right? Contribute to a startup or contribute to charity something, or a space project that is running, right? You can just maybe it could be $200 or $500, something. Contribute to that. I think you can still contribute to the sector even when you're not there. And of course, now we definitely have online way of interacting, right? Which became more prominent from 2020, right? So there is no excuse for you not to join a meeting or not to participate in something. And even the government is looking for local experts, right? So, I mean, tell someone that, I'm available. When they reach you, please say, I can contribute. It could be 2 hours, it could be more hours. So I think those are the areas that you definitely can be able to contribute. If you can sponsor a student, right? If God has put it on your heart and you have the finances, please, I mean, do sponsors. So I think for me, it is, you can train, you can participate, you can tell your story, and definitely you'll be able to contribute to the space industry back home. And think of your plan to go back home. Don't stay in these countries. Yeah, think of your plan to go back home. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alvin. And there are the things, there are also of projects that could be done in the continent, and work doesn't necessarily, the way work works now, you don't necessarily have to be in a place to actually contribute or work there. So yes, although we would encourage people to be on the continent, we also have to come up with these innovative solutions of looking at where someone can work in satellite, like you're working, for example, or be working in any other space company, but is able to still contribute to a national project or local project or non-profit project, like you're saying, back in the continent. I think that is very a very good approach to make sure that our talents, both home and abroad, is rooted in developing the continent. And we should keep talking about this. So let's go to Francophone Africa. I really want to hear from Dr. Ifrike, because we've discussed Africa space talents development as like a conversation, but he's on the field working on this already with Mission 237, I believe, for Francophone Africa. Dr. Ifrike, what do you want to tell us about that program? What is it about, and how does it contribute to this dialogue that we're having with Alvin and Wairimu? Thank you so much. I just give like a big shout out. Yeah, great.
I'm going to try to be quick. Hi, everybody. You know what? Let me clap with the actual sound of it. Fantastic presentations. Oh my God. And I have the camera has to be on. You need to see my excitement. This is not fake. It's fantastic. Nelly, listen, congratulations. You perhaps are not measuring what you are doing by putting this crowd together. It is absolute diamond. And initiatives like this need to be multiplied. So thank you, really. Thank you to the speakers, but Nelly, look, thank you. I put a comment there, I'm in Cameroon, and it's hard, but the advantages of being home. When it's hard, there's some meals I can eat, and then I know life is gonna be all right. And these things you don't measure when you're outside, and you're in contact with the continent. The advantages to coming back home. One of my most strategic advantages is that I'm in Cameroon. I'm the only person doing upstream technology in all of Central and West Africa as a private. The rest is government. This is, I just bask in this, people are willing to sign strategic partnerships with me, and I have to use this as an advantage because I'm here, I understand the culture, I know what's the story. You mentioned French-speaking Africa. There is a reason why I put a focus on the first Mission 237. I'm going to brief what it is, but just so it's clear, it's not that it's a mission for French-speaking Africa. There is a focus on French-speaking Africa because I have to bring the talent to enough English to participate in the space industry. If you don't have enough, even the French need to speak English to play in this game. So I managed to broker through the NMD Association. I'm going to just brief quickly a discount on TOEFL training and exam just to get members of the association to get a chance to come closer to English language in a way, not just to learn, but in a way that you can actually travel, because you sometimes need a TOEFL to get a visa to places. So what are we doing? NMD Association is a nonprofit that I started recently with the objective to pragmatically increase the space technology expertise in Africa. I go with the philosophy that if you're going to train a person how to drive, put the guy in a car or the girl. So we're building actually space satellites with real space missions. We're going for the Pocket Cube because it is so far the most affordable yet useful form of a spacecraft. It's 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters, fits right in here in the hand. But with it, you can do LoRa relay. You can do satellite IoT. And with satellite IoT, you can solve a host of African problems. I mean, a lot. And you can train people on how to build satellites. And you can actually have the flight model in universities. Because it's a Pocket Cube, you have a cookbook recipe, people actually learn the real deal. And from that point on, it's just a matter of scaling, right? So this is what I started. We've started, we're going. We had the second mission design workshop on Sunday. And the next one is going to be in about 2 weeks. So that's one thing I want to mention. I took some notes here. You mentioned brain drain. Brain drain is very real. And it affects Africa in the space sector. Why? Because space is an expertise aggregator, right? In Africa, you have fantastic software developers. You have fantastic electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, mechatronics engineers, embedded systems engineers. You need all that to get a successful space mission. And these guys are just going, We need them to aggregate them into successful space missions for the continent. So yes, the space sector in Africa, I feel it. Trust me. I was looking for an embedded systems intern to contribute to onboard intelligence, which is embedded AI for IoT applications. And my intern right now is from India, and she's in India and working from there. You see the kind of problems we have. So it's not a negative thing because the rest of the world is open to us. We need to be open to the rest of the world. But understand that if the talent stays, then we have a bit less issues finding people to contribute at the cutting edge, right? So Mission 237 are the space missions that are going to be vector for training. During design, we train about design. During AIT, assembly integration and test, we train about assembly integration and test. During launch and operation, we train about launch and operation. And it's going to be a constellation, so one mission after the other, after the other. How do we fund this, ladies and gentlemen? I love Alvin for what he said right now. Let me take off my glasses so I can see better and say this one, adding some drama to the part where you're going to talk about money. We can fund this thing ourselves. To have one mission 237 cost about 200,000 euros from design to launch to operation. It is extremely cheap compared to space missions, and suddenly the myth of this thing being out of access dies down a little bit. If you consider, Nelly, with your permission, I put some links on the chat, but I didn't send because I wanted your green light to send it.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Press yes, please.
Okay, let me press send. I came back to Cameroon. You can imagine how people said I'm crazy. But I shared my LinkedIn, and please everybody connect with me. And then anyone can find out what's actually my background, where this crazy guy comes from. The NMD Association, while building the satellites, wants to train people, right? There's a link also to the nonprofit association. It's a nonprofit organization. Why a nonprofit? Because nonprofits have fundraising mechanisms that for-profits don't, at least in Africa. So how do we fund the pragmatic training of Africans via a nonprofit where everyone on the call can decide, I'm going to sponsor the training of one person, and you can do that. Anyone can say, I'm going to put in $500, $200, like you said, Alvin, you can do it like right today. What the nonprofit then does is that it then recruits people and trains them. Right now, we're in the design phase. The design phase is supposed to end at the end of October. We still have time to train a lot of people on how to design a spacecraft and how to design a space mission. Help me fund the guys so we can train them through this part. We still need to raise for the mission. The diaspora can help. SGAC network can help for raise this thing, individuals and all our individual networks. If it's easy to say 200 people can put 1,000 euros, but if 200 people can put 500 euros, we're halfway there. And we're what 36 now on the call. We can actually train a few people after this call. And in 3 days, I'm running a masterclass on how to use IDMCIC, which is the tool that the French Space Agency uses to design satellites. While we're talking about training and upskilling and gaining competence in one area or the other, I mean, it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. The tools are freely available. Get trained, share. What I'm saying is that there were comments about space projects where we could use to train Africans. This is one. It's not the only one. There are more, right? It has as ambition to, in fact, there isn't a single satellite that can allow to train people across a whole continent at the moment. We're trying to send the first. And if Africa is the one to share, to give to the world a constellation to be trained, then I think we would have done a fantastic contribution. So not to talk too much. This is some of the crazy stuff I'm doing. I do believe it's possible. I believe we can fund it ourselves without waiting for government or waiting for big organizations. And it's real. It's happening. It started. Please come on board. Let's do something.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your vision with us, Dr. Efriki, and with so much passion. And I just know a lot of people must not have heard of Mission 3237. Sorry. So this is one way in which we can get to know that things are actually happening on the continent when it comes to space, and that these topics that we have as themes of our webinar are not just academic. And this is not an academic discussion. This is also like very practical, like the call to action that Wairimu had given before, where she pointed out all the things we need to do, including, innovation by startups, by NGOs, and Mission 237 is showing that. And I just want to say from Space Ops Africa and personally that we are all in and we are very supportive. We will share. Not sure about us raising 200,000 euros on the call, but yes, you have our goodwill and we are rooting for you, Dr. Efriki. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. And I think we still have time for other parts of the discussion. Someone's hand was up. Oluwafemi, yes, if you have a question for our speakers, let's continue the conversation now. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to ask, so just to confirm, is the course free or it might require something later on? I don't know.
Not quite sure. Because everybody, Dr. Sugar, I don't know if you want to respond to that maybe on the chat, but I think he has posted his LinkedIn for all questions on that course or for Mission 237. You could just direct that to him so that he can give you a holistic response due to the fact that we have limited time here. Hope you don't mind. Thank you. And yeah, I'm just going to look for any other hands, any other questions. Please free to put your questions on the chat box. Okay, I'm just going to return back to Wairimu again and Alvin. Hi, I'm still here. And for Wairimu, I also wanted to ask you about some platform communities and resources that I wrote here. I think you had shared some where aspiring professionals can build and sharpen their skills that may not be accessible through formal education. So you had talked about some of these apps, but there are a lot of things you need to learn about the space industry that you probably won't learn in school. And so what are the ways in your career have you been able to learn some of the skills you have, and you're working in the US and everything? What are these important skills, and how were you able to learn them? Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is where, again, there's an ecosystem around, the ecosystem around space becomes powerful, because formal education gives you the basics, but the real growth often comes from peer communities, open resources, and, any international platforms that allow you to kind of go outside the scope of what you're used to, your current environment.
Yeah.
So some practical pathways that we can start considering is, again, communities and networks. The Space Generation Advisory Council, which I believe you're a member, and I just recently joined as well, and Dr. Ifriki just mentioned it too. It connects young professionals worldwide with mentorship, policy discussions, and project opportunities. Then, platforms like yours, Space Hubs Africa, I believe, is also another way that young professionals and students can get involved. So supporting African students, professionals with training, networking, entrepreneurship. I think there's Women in Aerospace Africa as well, African Association of Remote Sensing and Environment, Remote Sensing of the Environment. So there's multiple communities out there that we can get involved in. And if at all you can't find one that speaks to you, create one.
Create one, absolutely. I think I love that point you made about creating your own, opportunity.
We need to stop getting stuck, and not thinking outside the box. So if it's not there, create a table for yourself and fill it with whoever it is that you feel will help you support your goals or your mission. Another thing, outside of just communities and networks, I would say competitions and practical experience. So look to see if there are any open competitions that, focus within the fields that you are interested in. And power of competitions is that it forces you to literally apply your skills in real time, right? And of course, the thrill and the ambition of trying to see if you can win the competition or get somewhere. And if at all anything you don't get there, at least there's some exposure that you've gotten out of that. It could be, so even hackathons, like I mentioned, programming is also an essential skill in this industry. So you can probably look into hackathons if that's your cup of tea as well. Training and online courses. So I think there's like Coursera. You'll find like some of these Ivy League universities also tend to have open resource and programs that they provide to the public. So some, free or affordable, and if at all anything, you have to pay something. I know, when you look at the conversions, whether it's dollars or euros or whatever it is, it might be a little pricey, but there's also the element of having free opportunities. So try see if you can look into some of that stuff. Google Earth Engine, Sentinel Hub tutorials. These give you like hand-on guides to analyze data sets using open source materials. So you'll find that, entities like NASA, the European Space Agency, UNUSA, they're going to release, or they have these data sets that are publicly available, which you can use to kind of help support some of the interests that you might have and build on that. And then finally, policy and governance resources. So African Union and even the African Space Agency, they have regional initiatives that help students or are starting to create those regional initiatives. So and again, I just don't want to focus on students. There's so many of us here. There's some people who might considering, a career change. There's those who are mid-career experts, whatever it is. Start seeing how you can get yourself involved in some of these things. And then another big one is, once again, UNUSA, the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs. So they're training modules and fellowships on international space law and governance, because you've got a whole plethora.
Yeah, it's a free module, and a lot of people don't know about that course. So they have a free course on space law. That's
so I think, just to close this out, I'd like to say that, the key is to see yourself as not waiting for opportunities, but building capability and visibility. So whether it's through coding, projects, competitions, community engagement, every small step creates momentum. And so Africa has abundant talent, and it's both, and it's very diverse in terms of where that talent fits, whether it's young kids, those of us who are mid-career, or even the older generation. But the real task here is just connecting the whole entire ecosystem that helps us.
Together. Yeah, I think, yeah. Absolutely. I think Alvin had mentioned how academia and industry are a bit disjointed. So I think we'll come back to Alvin to round up the call. But before that, I just want to hear from ATEAM, whose hand is up. And ATEAM leads one of the most prominent capacity building organization right now for space policy. He's like our mentor, making sure that we are young African space leaders. And yeah, ATEAM, we would like to hear from you.
Thank you, Nelly. Thanks, Wairimu, and thanks, Alvin. I think I met Alvin just recently. We had a chat recently. And thanks, Space Ops Africa for putting this up. I don't know. I don't attend every session, but at least for me, once I've attended, I think this appears to be the largest gatherings in terms of participation, at least from the beginning. I know we had over 40 people at the beginning. I think that shows the interest in this topic. I mean, in fact, actually, generally, all the topics that you guys have been putting forward have been very good and useful. So I think this has been very good. It's also good to see Ifriki, who I just got to meet again. Was it just last week? And we had a chat. So it's nice to see what he's doing.
Last week.
Yeah, just last week. Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
really hoping that, and I put this challenge before to Kwaku. For those of us who are in the, do I say civil society, the non-profit, for us to find a way to come together. I think that's one of the points.
Yes, we had a discussion on that on non-profits last
Yeah.
year. I think you were in that session.
Yes, I
Yeah.
was there. So to do a collaboration, so to say, and see what we can do, kind of synergize from this sector. I think
Yeah.
that would be very strong.
Yeah.
I noticed just one or two comments and then a question for both Wairimu and Alvin. I like the way you explained aeronautics and astronautics, which is also similar to the division that Alvin made around airspace, space segment and ground segment. There's some commonality there. So while from Wairimu's side talks about aviation compared to outer space, Alvin is above the ground. So anything above the ground, which Alvin calls space segment, is still that's air going up to. And I think Wairimu mentioned that point, that the future is sort of the fusion between airspace and outer space. And I think we need to, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's generally called high altitude platforms. So we need to look at how to develop skills towards, whether it's engineering or non-engineering skills towards managing or developing high altitude platforms. At ASLI, like Nestle has mentioned, ASLI will be about 3 years next month. But now from next year, we want to start looking at areas around airspace. That's the aviation side too, because of this idea. We're already seeing that there's this fusion coming up. Well, not coming up, it's already there, because if you look at some countries, the way they manage their systems, you see that they manage airspace and outer space. There's some overlap. Like the US has the Federal Aviation Administration, which handles both aviation, but also launch and re-entry. It's similar to the UK's Civil Aviation Administration. So this is fine. So my question really is about knowledge transfer. It's about IP, intellectual property. So for example, Wairimu, where you are, an international university, what are the things, because I guess you have some restrictions on what things you can share, even though you're in the academic or in the academia. What are the things that you are allowed? I know US even has very, very strong IP and technology transfer rules. So what are the things you are permitted to share? And generally, for the things you are interested in sharing, how do you navigate some of these rules or restrictions. Some of them may be written, some of them may not be written, but how do you navigate that? You are from the academia, and something similar question to Alvin. You work with Salit, which is a non-African company. I think you mentioned that. So, and you're also an educator too. What are the things you are permitted to share? How do you navigate the things that you are interested in sharing? These things are good, but maybe there may be some written rules around that. I remember one of my friends who was in ISU. I don't know I think you know him. I don't want to mention his name, but he told me that when he was in ISU, even for his student projects, there are some uh, uh, defense or presentations he could not participate in simply because he's from not part, that is not from that part of the world. So I know all these issues come up in different institutions. I don't attempt to know how you guys manage these sort of things. Yeah, thank you.
All right, I think I'll start off. What I will say in terms of academia, and considering the fact that I'm currently in the US, research is very broad. And I think maybe there's a misconception in terms of the fact that, okay, now that we're here in this part of the world, there's certain things, of course, it's true, yes, that there's certain intellectual property that cannot be shared. But what I typically see on my end is that research or resources that are not easily or readily available are those that are probably connected to the government. So anything that is defense-based or anything that is considered, top secret or has an element of having the government's hand in it, then those are some of the projects that might be difficult in terms of being able to share or even get involved in. Outside of that, I find there's actually usually a much broader spectrum in being able to search far and wide or collaborate. So I think it just depends on the nature of the research that is being applied and the stakeholders in it is what I would say. But for the most part, I think the system here does provide flexibility. It just depends on the type of projects that are being sourced or shared.
I think just to add on and not to repeat what you've said, I think so space has changed. I think now some people say we are in new space 3.0. It's no longer even 2.0. And so now we have the private sector coming up. And so as she has said, for the defense, which is in the government sector, of course, that has restrictions and that cannot be shared. But for the private sector, there is really no restriction. It is just that for a company that has made a space product, a technology product, of course, will have intellectual property over its product. But yeah, it can be able to share, this is the thing, this is the thing, this is the thing. So I would say is that depending on which sector you are in, if you're in the government sector, of course, there are restrictions that need to be respected there. But like I'm saying, that space has moved so much that the private sector is really, really growing. And I feel like that's more flexible in how things can be shared and how things, but of course, for a company, they reserve the right to have intellectual property over the product that they have made. But still, it's still possible to put it out on the market and be able to collaborate with them. Yeah.
I don't know if Nelly can allow me to ask maybe a follow-up question. And that has to do with, we talked about brain drain, but, brain drain is not just about, and I think Alvin hinted on this, it's not just people leaving African countries outside, but even within Africa, if you look at people leaving the space sector for other sectors, either because there are no jobs within the space sector or there are no challenging activities going on. So they move to some other places where there are activities. And like if Ricky mentioned, it's kind of really hard. So that's the question really, especially for like he's doing upstream, which makes it even tougher. So how do we sustain interest? Because people need to, well, one, find fulfillment, but they also need to survive. They need to be able to take care of themselves. So what can we do within the African ecosystem to ensure that we keep people are able to do things, people are able to take care of themselves, to reduce this issue of brain drain, whether outside Africa or outside the sector? Yeah.
I think for that, as I had shared, government has a role to play, industry has a role to play, and academia has a role to play. For me, in the simplest version is that if someone has been trained and they have failed to find a job, because the space industry has become very global, that you can sit in Tanzania and still be employed by a space operator who is not in Tanzania, right? And so I think also for Africans to start to look out for jobs and opportunities because there are projects that come, new space investors come and are trying to start up companies and say they would like to hire people that are on ground. So if your country can't hire you, I think there's provision for you to look outside your country because it's a global sector. You can still move from Tanzania and go to Togo and go to Djibouti and go to, I think for me that is a possibility. I think also is that if you do research, you see the thing with research is you're putting your name out there, you're putting your capacity, your knowledge out there. And so if you put it out there, someone will come on it, someone will, see it up and say, okay, can we collaborate on this project and that project? So I think that's a good way to position yourself, right? And of course, we said build as many networks as possible. So that is in your control, right? Because it's a small sector, there are people always looking for this opportunity, that opportunity, looking for people to work on these projects. And if you position yourself in the control that you have, right? And you train yourself, you keep on with the networks, you keep on acquiring knowledge, there'll be an opportunity for you at some time. Because if you stop, of course, when that chance comes, it will find you unprepared. And so I think you can still continuously train yourself. Yes, the state has a role to play. The industry has a role to play. The academia has a role to play. But I think also we have a role to play. We have something that we can do that is in our control. Yes, I will stop there and give it to Mwangi to continue from there. Yeah.
I think everything has been summed up well. And once again, just to echo what Alvin is saying, the responsibilities on us and the different factions, whether it's academia, whether it's industry, whether it's government. And with intellectual property at times, and even the let me see what, I guess, specificity of this industry and how some of these technologies are emerging, and at times you'll find that people want to keep it top secret before they release them. I think it's just finding a way that we can do it collaboratively without, overstepping and ensuring that we are also being competent.
Points from everybody. Thank you so much, Etim, for bringing a fresh perspective and just new issues to the dialogue. I think what I got from this discussion, the last two conversations, two things. The first is the harsh reality. So just coming again from this very political mindset, so my PhD is in politics, that the space industry is not all dandy and fairy and rosy. So we've talked about skills, we've talked about capacity building, but at the beginning of the call, Wairimu, you talked about benchmarking and Africa having a seat at the table to learn. But how can we learn if people are not willing to share and teach? Because these are sensitive, these are military technologies, and it's there's a dilemma there where we need access to these technologies, and then, because of political and military reasons, it's hard. It's not just propulsion technology and things like that. It's not just, hey, come see how we do this. This is how we are planning to do this. And there's also the intellectual property with companies like Alvin had mentioned as well. So it's a very tricky situation, which brings us back to the issue of Africans trying to co-create while also making sure that we prioritize technological sovereignty. How can we also do this ourselves? How did other people do it? How did other continents do it? How did other countries do it? And also focusing on diplomacy, of course, but also that collaboration might not get us everything we need. It can get us so far. So that's what I got from that discussion. And I thought to sum it up. Thank you so much again, Itim. And right before we end the call, I might just share my screen one more time, just to look at upcoming activities. Okay, just give me a second. Okay. Okay. Okay, right here, and there we go. Okay, so this is the conversation we had today, and thank you so much, Wairimu and Alvin. It's been such an interesting discussion, and from very different viewpoints. I'm sure a lot of people have learned. And if you have any further questions, like Alvin had mentioned, their DMs are open on LinkedIn. People should be bold enough to ask questions. I'm constantly still learning from different people in the industry. Even before starting a project, an academic project like a PhD, I had to call Itim several times. Do you think this idea is good? Do you think it will really help? Like, does this even make any sense? And so many people are maybe scared or worried that experts or professionals, professors or technical experts wouldn't respond. Some of them are actually very nice. So if you send a message to like 10 people, the chances of 5 people responding are very high. So just to encourage the students and young professionals here to just be bold to reach out. It's a very small sector. Again, I think Wairimu had mentioned, and everybody knows everybody. It's easy to learn if you want to learn. So just to give that closing word on that. And for our next dialogue session coming soon, and World Space Week is living in space. At first, when I saw this topic, I was very skeptical. I was like, why is it living in space? Because not every continent or not every country, or probably not even everybody, it's a controversial topic. Do we want to live in space? But over the weeks, I've seen that's really interesting, and I've asked some questions around, and it might be nice to see topics or themes around Afrofuturism and imaginaries or living in space from an African perspective. So we hope to have this dialogue next month, and I'll keep everybody posted on that. Thank you so much once again. I'm going to send the link for the webinar now, for our webinar group chat. I think I should have it somewhere. So you can follow us on social media, and you can keep in touch with any of our sessions. If you have suggestions on sessions, I would be very happy to take that as well. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Nelly. So just before we go, I wanted to give my parting shots. So first of all, thank you for this initiative. I think it's as the good doctor said, that this is good, and I am glad to participate in this. I think consistency is key, right? If we keep on being consistent in doing good things, then there is hope, right? I think for me, my parting shots to whoever is here and is an African, as I said, keep the passion burning, right? Do not lose the passion, because if you lose hope, then you have nothing moving, right? So keep the passion burning, keep on learning. Life is you keep on learning every day, right? And you will make mistakes. You will definitely make mistakes. You will definitely not know, right? And be flexible. Space is an international sector, so be flexible. You'll meet people from different parts of the world who will have different types of thinking. Be flexible, to come on the same table and have discussions and learn from each other. And like I said, when you learn, go and implement and train another person, because in 10 years, you will be looking back and telling your children that we were part of the pioneer cohort of the space industry. If you did your part right. If you didn't do it right, you unfortunately will have nothing to say, but to say, you know these things. I wish. So do what is in your control. And of course, I am a believer in God and pray. God will hear your heart's desires and he will grant them to you. Okay, thank you very much. You are muted, Nelly.
I'm not using the device I usually use, so I'm a bit confused. Sorry. Thank you. I was going to say Wairimu should also give us her parting words, and then we take a group photograph for the webinar. I think some people have left, but for those of us that are still here, after Wairimu is done, we can take a picture. Over to you, Wairimu.
Thank you. I think, yeah, I'll just, for me, my parting shot is thank you. And I'm also really glad to see the interest that is here and being showcased today. And collaboration is key. Teamwork. I'm always telling my students teamwork and communication and finding a way to collaborate, because I think together in unity, we can go far rather than, gatekeeping and saying, okay, I'm going to do this myself. So learn, network, reach out to people, be the anomaly that, steps out if you need to, and create opportunities if you have to as well. So thank you so much, Nelly, as well. I think Dr. Ifriki put it well in terms of, I don't think you measure how much you're doing by holding these sessions. So thank you so much to you and everybody who took the time to sit with us and just
thank you both. Thank you both for sharing all your wonderful thoughts with us. Definitely we'll be in touch as well. And just seeing who's on the